Hey everyone, and welcome. Have you ever felt that bone-deep exhaustion that comes from trying to control things you just can't control? I'm talking about other people's opinions, their ever-changing moods, the choices they make that drive you crazy. Seriously, we've all been there. That endless cycle of chasing approval, constantly worrying about what everyone else is thinking, feeling like you're somehow responsible for everyone else's happiness. It's exhausting, isn't it? It's like you're running on a treadmill, going nowhere fast, and feeling completely depleted. Well, get ready to hit the stop button on that treadmill because we're about to dive into a concept that can seriously change your life. We are talking about Mel Robbins' groundbreaking book, The Let Them Theory. If you're not familiar with Mel Robbins, she's the force of nature behind the 5-second rule. You know, that simple but brilliant technique that helps you push past procrastination and take action. She's also the host of a chart-topping podcast, and her work has helped millions of people around the world take control of their lives. And she's known for this incredible ability to take complex ideas and make them not only understandable but actionable. Mel's style is no nonsense, super relatable, and she's all about giving you the tools you need to create real, lasting change. And that's exactly what the Let Them theory is all about. This isn't just another fluffy self-help mantra that sounds good but doesn't actually do anything. This is a practical, science-backed framework for reclaiming your power. We're talking about seriously simplifying your life and building the kind of amazing, fulfilling relationships you've always wanted. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Easier said than done, right? But trust me, this is different. This book isn't about becoming a doormat, letting people walk all over you. It's not about giving up or becoming passive. It's about becoming powerful in the right way. It is about understanding what you can control and learning to let go of the rest. In this video, we're going to unpack the Let Them theory from start to finish. We'll explore the core principles that make it so effective. We'll look at how it applies to all different areas of your life, from managing stress and dealing with difficult people, to overcoming comparison and building stronger friendships and romantic relationships. And, most importantly, I'll give you some actionable steps, things you can start doing today to put this theory into practice. So, buckle up, get ready to take some notes, and prepare to be empowered. Because you're about to learn a simple yet incredibly profound tool that has the potential to change everything about how you interact with the world and how you feel about yourself. Let's get started. All right, let's talk about control, specifically the illusion of control. We spend so much of our lives, don't we, trying to control things that are fundamentally uncontrollable. Think about it, other people's actions, their opinions, whether they like you, whether they text you back, traffic, the weather, that annoying coworker who chews with their mouth open. You name it. We try to manage it, fix it, influence it, change it. And what happens? We end up feeling frustrated, anxious, stressed, and completely powerless. It's like trying to hold back the ocean with a teaspoon. It's futile. You're pouring all this energy into something that you have absolutely no control over, and it's just draining you dry. We think we can influence these things. We tell ourselves that if we just try hard enough, we can change someone's mind or make them behave the way we want them to. But the reality is, you can't. And that constant striving, that constant attempt to control the uncontrollable is what's making you miserable. Think about those everyday situations. You're trying to change your partner's annoying habits. Maybe they leave their socks on the floor, or they're always late, or they never do the dishes. You nag, you complain, you hint. And nothing changes. Or maybe you're obsessing over a friend's judgment. Do they like me? Did I say the wrong thing? Are they mad at me? You're constantly analyzing their every word, their every text message, trying to figure out where you stand. Or maybe you're stuck in traffic, getting more and more enraged with every red light, every slow driver. All of these scenarios have one thing in common. You're focusing on something outside of yourself, something you can't control. And that's where the magic of Let Them comes in. Let Them is, at its core, an act of radical acceptance. It's about recognizing reality for what it is. People are going to do what they're going to do. Things are going to happen that you don't like. You can't stop it. You can't control it. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start reclaiming your energy and your peace of mind. It is not about giving up. It's not about becoming a passive observer in your own life. It's about choosing sanity. It's about saying, okay, this is happening. I can't change it, so I'm going to let it go. Imagine trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You have to use all your strength, all your energy, just to keep it submerged. It's exhausting, right? Let Them is like releasing that beach ball. You let go and it floats to the surface. And suddenly, you're free. You're no longer expending all that effort on something that was fighting you every step of the way. So, how do you actually do this? It's simpler than you think. The moment you catch yourself getting worked up about something you can't control, that slow driver, that rude comment, that friend who hasn't texted you back, just say to yourself mentally, let them. Let them be late. Let them be rude. Let them not text back. Just let them. And then take a few deep breaths. Seriously, breathe. It's amazing how a few conscious breaths can help calm your nervous system and bring you back to the present moment. This is your first step to using this in your life. But here's the thing. Let them on its own is only half the equation. If you only say, let them, you risk becoming passive, withdrawn, or maybe even feeling a little bit superior, like, oh, I'm so above all this drama. It's like saying, I don't care, and walking away from every situation. That's not the point. Let them is about releasing control, yes, but it's not about disengaging from life. That's where the crucial second part comes in. Let me. Let me is the action step. It's the empowering counterpart to let them. It's about taking responsibility for your response, your actions, your life, while let them is about acknowledging what you can't control. Let me is about focusing on what you can control, your thoughts, your feelings, your choices. For example, someone's being grumpy and ruining the mood? Let them be grumpy, but let me focus on my work. Let me not get dragged down into their negativity. A friend is constantly judging your life choices. Let them judge, but let me make decisions that align with my values, with what I believe is right for me. See the difference? Let them is about releasing the external. Let me is about taking ownership of the internal. Together, let them and let me create this incredibly powerful cycle. You release the need to control what's happening out there, and you take decisive action based on what's happening in here. It's about acceptance and empowerment. It's about recognizing the limits of your influence and the boundless potential of your own choices. It's like riding a wave. You can't control the wave, its size, its power, its direction. That's let them. You acknowledge the wave, you accept its existence. But let me is about how you're going to ride that wave. Are you going to let it crash over you and pull you under? Or are you going to grab your board, position yourself, and ride it with skill and grace? Mel provides a helpful visual. Imagine yourself on one side of a seesaw and someone else's actions are on the other. If you have a negative emotional reaction to what they do, it's like you are sinking down and they are rising. You are giving them the power. If you use let them to shrug it off, you rise up and they go down. But if you only use let them, you'll be stuck up there alone. Let me helps bring balance into the dynamic. So to recap, let them is about letting go of the things you can't control. Let me is about taking responsibility for the things you can. It's not about being passive. It's about being powerful in the right way. Powerful in your choices, powerful in your actions, powerful in your response to the world around you. It's about choosing to focus your energy where it actually matters, on yourself. And that, my friends, is where real change begins. So we've established that let them and let me are these incredibly powerful tools for reclaiming our energy and focusing on what we can control. Now, let's see how this applies to one of the biggest challenges we all face: stress. Let's be real. Life is stressful. We live in a world of constant stimulation, constant demands, constant pressure. We're bombarded with notifications pinging on our phones, overflowing email inboxes, never-ending to-do lists, looming deadlines, traffic jams that make you want to scream, and rude people who seem to exist solely to test your patience. It can feel like death by 1,000 cuts, can't it? One tiny annoyance after another, slowly chipping away at your energy, your mood, your sanity. And the problem is, we often react to these little stressors as if they're major crises. Think about it. You're stuck in a ridiculously long line at the coffee shop. What do? You start tapping your foot, sighing dramatically, maybe even muttering under your breath about how incompetent the barista is. Or someone cuts you off in traffic, and you instantly go into full-on road rage mode, honking your horn, yelling, maybe even making some creative hand gestures. Each of these reactions, these tiny explosions of frustration and anger, is giving away your power. You're letting these external forces, the slow line, the bad driver, dictate your internal state. You're letting them steal your peace, your focus, your happiness. And it's all happening on a subconscious physiological level. When you get stressed, your brain's amygdala, that little almond-shaped part responsible for your fight or flight response, gets triggered. It's like a switch flips, and suddenly you're in survival mode. Your heart races, your breathing gets shallow, your muscles tense up. This is a natural response designed to protect you from danger. But when it's constantly activated by these minor, everyday annoyances, it leaves you feeling drained, overwhelmed, and on edge. That's where let them becomes your secret weapon. The next time you find yourself in one of these stressful situations, the long line, the traffic jam, the overflowing inbox, the moment you feel that tension rising, say to yourself, let them. Let them be slow. Let them cut me off. Let them send another email. Just let them. Acknowledge that you can't control the situation. You can't magically make the line move faster. You can't force the other driver to be more considerate. You can't stop the emails from coming. But you can control your reaction to it. Mel Robbins shares a perfect example of this in the book. She was at a garden center ready to check out, and the cashier was moving at a glacial pace. Mel felt that familiar frustration building up, that urge to complain, to roll her eyes, to let the situation ruin her mood. But instead, she said to herself, let them be slow. And just like that, the tension started to dissipate. It didn't magically speed up the cashier, but it did protect Mel's inner peace. It prevented that small annoyance from snowballing into a full-blown bad mood. But remember, let them is only half the equation. The real power comes when you combine it with let me. So, after you've said let them, and you've acknowledged that you can't control the external situation, ask yourself, what can I control? Let me take a deep breath. Let me choose to focus on something positive. Let me put on my headphones and listen to a podcast instead of fuming. Let me use this time to catch up on some reading. Let me cover my nose and mouth with my scarf. See what you're doing? You're redirecting your energy. You're taking that frustration, that annoyance, and you're channeling it into something productive, something enjoyable, something that actually serves you. You're refusing to be a victim of your circumstances. You're choosing to be the master of your own experience. And that, my friends, is how you start to take back control of your life, one stressful moment at a time. You are actively choosing to not let the outside world affect your internal world. We've seen how let them and let me can help us navigate those everyday stressors. But what about the big ones? What about the kind of stress that feels like it's woven into the very fabric of your life? Let's talk about work. For so many of us, work is a major source of stress. It's not just the occasional long line at the coffee shop. It's a constant barrage of demands, pressures, and challenges. We're talking demanding bosses who seem to have unrealistic expectations, difficult colleagues who make every day a struggle, long hours that leave you feeling drained and depleted, and that constant feeling of not being recognized or appreciated for your hard work. It can feel overwhelming, can't it? Like you're trapped in this endless cycle of stress, with no escape in sight. And what do we do when we feel trapped? We try to control things. We try to control our boss's opinion of us, obsessing over every email, every interaction, trying to anticipate their every need. We try to control our colleagues' behavior, getting frustrated when they don't work the way we do, or when they don't meet our expectation. We try to control the company's decisions, getting angry and resentful when things don't go our way. But here's the harsh truth. You can't control these things. You can't control your boss's mood, you can't control your colleague's personality, and you certainly can't control the direction of the entire company. And the more you try to control these things, the more stressed, anxious, and powerless you're going to feel. The book illustrates a situation. Imagine you're working really hard, going above and beyond, hitting the numbers, making important contributions. You're expecting, deserving of a promotion. But when you finally work up the courage to ask your boss about it, you get some version of, the company isn't doing great now, my hands are tied. Sound familiar? You feel crushed. This is where you need to stop trying to control and lean into the power of let them. It's a powerful mindset shift. Let them be unfair. Let your boss not recognize your contributions. Let the company make decisions that you don't agree with. Let them not give you that promotion you deserve. Let them string you along. Let them... It sounds harsh, doesn't it? But remember, this isn't about giving up. It's about acknowledging reality. It's about recognizing that you can't force someone to appreciate you or to give you what you want. But here's where the magic happens. Once you've said let them, you can say let me. Let me focus on what I can control. Let me focus on my own performance, on doing the best work I can. regardless of whether or not it's immediately recognized. Let me focus on my attitude, on showing up with energy and enthusiasm, even when I'm feeling discouraged. Let me take stock of my skills. And, most importantly, let me take control of my future. Maybe that means updating your resume, polishing up your LinkedIn profile, starting to network, and exploring other job opportunities. Let me choose to spend my weekends looking for better opportunities. See what's happening here? You're shifting your focus from the external to the internal. You're no longer wasting your energy trying to change things you can't change. Instead, you're channeling that energy into action, into taking steps that will actually move you forward. Let Me is about reclaiming your power. It's about refusing to be a victim of your circumstances. It's about recognizing that even when things are tough, even when you're feeling stuck, you always have a choice. You can choose to stay where you are, feeling resentful and powerless. Or you can choose to take control of your own destiny to create the career and the life that you truly want. The key is to stop focusing on them and start focusing on you, because that's where your real power lies. We've tackled stress, both the everyday kind and the career-crushing kind. Now, let's move on to something that holds so many of us back: the fear of what other people think. It's deeply human, isn't it? This desire for approval. We all want to be liked, to be accepted, to be admired. We want to fit in, to belong, to feel like we're part of the group. It's wired into our DNA. But the problem is, this craving for approval can quickly turn into a fear of judgment, and that fear can be absolutely paralyzing. It can stop you in your tracks. Think about how this fear manifests in your own life. Maybe you hold back in meetings, afraid to share your ideas because you're worried about what your colleagues will think. Maybe you censor yourself on social media, carefully crafting the perfect image, terrified of posting anything that might be controversial or unpopular. Maybe you avoid taking risks, starting that business, writing that book, pursuing that passion, because you're afraid of what people will say if you fail. We water down our personalities. We silence our voices. We shrink ourselves to fit into these tiny little boxes, all because we're terrified of what other people might think. We're letting their potential opinions dictate our actual lives. And here's the cold, hard truth. People are going to judge you. They're going to have opinions about your choices, about your appearance, about your career, about your relationships, about everything. It's inevitable. It's part of being human. And you have absolutely no control over it. You can't control what someone else thinks any more than you can control the weather. Their opinions are their own. And they're often based on their own insecurities, their own biases, their own limited perspectives. They have nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. Trying to control it is exhausting. Mel Robbins shares a powerful story about this in the book. When she was first starting out as a speaker, she knew she needed to be active on social media. She knew it was the way to connect with her audience, to build her brand, to get her message out there. But she hesitated. For years. Why? Because she was terrified of what people would think. She worried that her friends and family would judge her, that they'd think she was being too much, that they'd roll their eyes at her posts. She imagined all the negative comments, all the criticism, all the ways people might misunderstand her. So she held back. She crafted the perfect posts and then deleted them. She second-guessed herself constantly. She let the fear of judgment control her actions, and it kept her stuck, playing small, for far too long. Sound familiar? How many times have you held yourself back because of what someone else might think? That's where "let them" becomes your liberation mantra. Let them judge. Let them have their opinions. Let them disapprove. Let them think you're too loud, too quiet, too ambitious, too lazy, too whatever. Let them think whatever the heck they want. It's a radical act of self-acceptance. It's about recognizing that you can't please everyone, and that trying to do so is a losing battle. It's about freeing yourself from the exhausting burden of constantly seeking external validation. When you truly embrace "let them," you give yourself permission to breathe. You give yourself permission to be you, unfiltered, unedited, unapologetically. But, as always, there's the powerful second half. Let me. Let me be authentic. Let me speak my truth, even if it's unpopular. Let me pursue my passions, even if others don't understand them. Let me make choices that align with my values, with my vision for my life, regardless of what anyone else thinks. Let me is about taking back your power. It's about refusing to let the fear of judgment dictate your decisions. It's about living your life on your terms, not someone else's life. It's about recognizing that the only opinion that truly matters is your own. And when you start living from that place, when you start prioritizing your own inner compass over the external noise, that's when you truly start to shine. That's when you step into your full potential. That's when you start living a life that is truly, authentically yours. We've explored how let them can free us from the fear of judgment and help us live more authentically. But what about the people closest to us? What about family? Family, the word itself, evokes so many emotions, doesn't it? Love, loyalty, belonging, but also, let's be honest, frustration, obligation, and sometimes outright conflict. Family relationships can be the most rewarding connections in our lives, the source of our deepest joy and support. But they can also be the most challenging, the ones that push our buttons like nothing else. Why is that? Because with family, we have these deeply ingrained patterns, these unspoken expectations, these unresolved conflicts that go back years, sometimes even generations. We have this shared history, this intricate web of connections that can make even the simplest interactions feel loaded with meaning. And just like in other areas of our lives, we often fall into the trap of trying to control things. We try to change our family members. We want them to be different, to think differently, to act differently. We might feel responsible for their happiness, for their well-being, for their choices. We might try to fix them, to advise them, to mold them into the people we think they should be. We try to control how our family members should behave. But as we've already learned, that's a recipe for disaster. You can't control another person, no matter how much you love them. And that constant striving, that constant attempt to change them only creates more tension, more resentment, more distance. It's exhausting for you and it's suffocating for them. So, how do we navigate these complex family dynamics? How do we love the people who sometimes drive us absolutely crazy? The answer, once again, lies in let them. Let them have their opinions. Let them disagree with your life choices. Let them disapprove of your partner, or your career, or your parenting style. Let them be critical. Let them be judgmental. Let them be, well, them. This doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It doesn't mean you have to condone their behavior. It simply means accepting that they are who they are, and that you can't force them to be different. It's about releasing the need to control their thoughts, their feelings, their actions. Mel Robbins introduces a powerful concept here called frame of reference. It's about understanding that everyone sees the world through their own unique lens, shaped by their own experiences, their own beliefs, their own values. And that lens might be very different from yours. She shares a personal story about her relationship with her mother. When Mel met her husband, Chris, she was head over heels in love. But her mother wasn't thrilled. She didn't approve of Chris, and she made it very clear. Mel was devastated, angry, and confused. She wanted her mother's blessing, her support, her excitement. But it wasn't until years later, after applying the let them theory, that Mel truly understood her mother's perspective. Her mother had left her own family and home at a young age, and had always regretted not being closer to them. When Mel chose to marry someone from a different part of the country, it triggered her mother's own fears and anxieties about losing her daughter. Her mother was seeing the situation through her own frame of reference. It wasn't about Mel or about Chris. It was about her mother's own experiences, her own pain, her own fears. And that's the key. When you can understand where someone is coming from, even if you don't agree with them, it creates space for compassion, for understanding, for connection. It allows you to let them have their feelings, their opinions, their perspective, without taking it personally. But, as always, let them is only half the story. We also need to bring in let me. Let me set boundaries. Let me decide how much time I want to spend with my family, and under what circumstances. Let me communicate my needs clearly and respectfully. Let me choose to disengage from conversations that are unproductive or hurtful. Let me prioritize my own well-being, even if it means disappointing someone else. Let me is about taking responsibility for your own experience within the family dynamic. It's about recognizing that you have choices, that you're not obligated to tolerate disrespect, or criticism, or constant negativity. It's about creating a relationship that feels healthy and balanced for you. It is important to remember, using only let them will cause isolation. Be sure to focus also on what you can do. So the next time you find yourself in a tense situation with a family member, remember, let them and let me. Let them have their opinions, their feelings, their perspective, but let you set boundaries, communicate your needs, and choose to create a relationship that honors both your own well-being and the love you share. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. We've talked about family and how challenging those relationships can be. But let's get even more real for a minute, because sometimes it's not just about differing opinions or difficult personalities. Sometimes it's about dealing with full-blown adult tantrums. Yeah, you heard me right, tantrums. We tend to associate tantrums with toddlers throwing themselves on the floor because they can't have a cookie. But the truth is, adults throw tantrums too. They just look a little different. And here's a slightly shocking truth that Mel Robbins learned from her therapist. Most adults are just 8-year-old children inside of big bodies. What does that mean? It means that, emotionally, many of us are still operating with the maturity level of a child. We haven't learned how to process our feelings in a healthy way, how to communicate our needs effectively, how to regulate our reactions when things don't go our way. Think about it. When a child doesn't get what they want, a toy, a treat, attention, what do? They might cry, scream, stomp their feet, throw themselves on the floor, or shut down completely. They haven't yet developed the skills to cope with disappointment, frustration, or anger in a mature way. Now, think about the adults in your life. How do they react when they don't get what they want? Maybe they don't throw themselves on the floor, although, let's be honest, some of them might want to, but they might give you the silent treatment. Instead of expressing their feelings directly, they shut down, withdraw, and refuse to communicate. Child behavior, sulking in the corner. Become passive-aggressive. They make snide remarks, sarcastic comments, or subtle digs, instead of addressing the issue head-on. Child behavior, pouting and refusing to cooperate. Erupt in anger. They yell, scream, say hurtful things, or even become physically aggressive. Child behavior, throwing a full-blown tantrum. Play the victim. They act helpless, blame others for their problems, and refuse to take responsibility for their own actions. Child behavior, whining and complaining. Avoid confrontation. They do anything to prevent a disagreement. Child behavior, running away. Lie. They will lie to get their way or to avoid the consequences. Child behavior, lying. Sound familiar? We've all witnessed these behaviors. And, if we're being honest, we've probably engaged in some of them ourselves. Because, at our core, we're all still carrying around that inner child, that part of us that hasn't quite learned how to handle big emotions. Most adults don't know how to process emotions. They haven't been taught. Their parents likely didn't know how to do it. It's not something you learn in school. So what do? We react. We lash out. We shut down. We do whatever we can to avoid feeling the discomfort of those big, messy emotions. And that's where let them comes in. When you see an adult throwing a tantrum, whether it's your partner giving you the silent treatment, your boss yelling at you in a meeting, or your friend making passive-aggressive comments, remember that 8-year-old child inside them. Let them cry. Let them sulk. Let them stomp their feet, metaphorically speaking, of course. Let them have their emotional outburst. It's not your job to fix it. It's not your job to soothe them, to make them feel better, to give them what they want. Just like you wouldn't give a toddler a cookie to stop them from throwing a tantrum, you don't give an adult their way just to avoid their emotional reaction. The solution isn't to give in. The solution is to let them have their feelings, to let them experience the consequences of their behavior, and to not get sucked into their drama. It's about recognizing that their emotional immaturity is not your responsibility. It's about setting boundaries, protecting your own energy, and choosing to respond in a way that is healthy and empowering for you. Because ultimately, that's all you can control. We've established that dealing with adult tantrums requires a hefty dose of let them, recognizing that you can't control someone else's emotional outbursts. But what about those situations where you're the one wrestling with a difficult decision, a decision that you know is right, but that feels absolutely terrible? This is where things get really tricky. Because sometimes the right decision, the decision that is ultimately best for you, is also the decision that's going to cause pain. Pain for you and pain for the people you care about. Think about those major life choices: ending a relationship, quitting a job, moving to a new city, setting a firm boundary with a family member. These decisions are rarely easy. They're often accompanied by a whole host of difficult emotions: guilt, fear, doubt, sadness, anxiety. It's a heavy mental toll. You might find yourself agonizing over the decision, going back and forth, weighing the pros and cons, playing out all the possible scenarios in your head. You might lose sleep, lose your appetite, feel constantly on edge, because you know deep down what you need to do, but you're terrified of the consequences. You're worried about hurting someone you love. You're afraid of disappointing people, of letting them down. You're scared of making the wrong choice, of regretting your decision later on. You might even be afraid of the other person's reaction, their anger, their sadness, their disapproval. And here's the thing, those emotions are valid. It's okay to feel conflicted, to feel scared, to feel sad. Making hard decisions is hard. It's supposed to be hard. It means you care. It means you're considering the impact of your choices on others. But, and this is crucial, your emotions can also betray you. They can cloud your judgment. They can make you second-guess yourself. They can lead you to make decisions based on fear, or guilt, or a desire to avoid discomfort, rather than on what you know is truly right for you. Your emotions can trick you into staying in situations that are no longer serving you, simply because you're afraid of the pain of leaving. They can convince you to say yes when you really want to say no, because you don't want to disappoint someone. They can keep you stuck in patterns of behavior that are ultimately self-destructive, because the thought of changing feels too overwhelming. That's why, in these moments, you need to tap into the power of let me. Let me be honest with myself. Let me acknowledge what I truly want, what I truly need, even if it's scary, even if it's painful, even if it means disappointing someone else. Let me cut through the noise of my emotions and connect with that deeper sense of knowing, that inner voice that tells me what's right for me. And sometimes, let me means being honest with someone else. It means having that difficult conversation, the one you've been avoiding, the one that you know is going to be uncomfortable, maybe even heartbreaking. It might mean saying, I'm not happy in this relationship anymore. It might mean saying, I need to quit this job even though it's a great opportunity. It might mean saying, I need to set a boundary with you because this behavior is hurting me. It's about speaking your truth, even when your voice shakes. It's about honoring your own needs, even when it's difficult. It's about recognizing that you can't make everyone happy, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for the other person is to be honest, even when it hurts. Because here's the thing, people will be mad. They will be disappointed. They will be heartbroken. You can't control their reactions, but you can control your own actions. You can choose to be honest, to be authentic, to be true to yourself, and that ultimately is what matters most. That's where your power lies. That's how you create a life that is aligned with your values, with your dreams, with your deepest sense of self. And that, my friends, is worth fighting for. Even when it feels wrong, it's often the most right thing you can do. We've been talking a lot about managing our reactions to other people, to difficult situations, to our own emotions. But there's another major obstacle that can trip us up, something that can steal our joy and keep us stuck in a cycle of negativity: comparison. It's almost unavoidable, isn't it? We live in a world of constant exposure to other people's lives, especially with social media. We see their highlight reels, their perfect vacations, their seemingly flawless relationships, their amazing careers, their beautiful homes, and we start to compare. We compare our bodies, our bank accounts, our achievements, our relationships, our everything. We measure ourselves against this often unrealistic standard, and we inevitably come up short. It's a natural human tendency. We're wired to look around, to assess our place in the social hierarchy, to see how we stack up. But comparison, when it becomes chronic, when it becomes a constant source of self-criticism and negativity, can be incredibly destructive. It leads to feelings of inadequacy, of not being good enough. It fuels envy and resentment, making us bitter and jealous of other people's success. It can paralyze us, making us feel like there's no point in even trying, because we'll never measure up. And here's the thing, life isn't fair. It's just not. Some people are born with advantages, genetic advantages, financial advantages, social advantages. Some people do seem to have more luck, to have things fall into place more easily. Some people have different circumstances, different opportunities, different starting points. That's a fact. It's a harsh reality, but it's a reality nonetheless. And you can't change it. You can't change your genetics, you can't change your upbringing, you can't change the hand you were dealt. So, what do? We get stuck in this cycle of wishing things were different, of feeling sorry for ourselves, of resenting other people's good fortune. We tell ourselves that it's not fair, that we deserve better, that we're somehow being cheated out of the life we want. And that's where let them becomes so incredibly powerful. Let them have their advantages. Let them have their perfect bodies, their amazing careers, their seemingly effortless success. Let them have their perfect lives, or more accurately, what looks like a perfect life from the outside. It's about accepting that life is not a competition. It's not a zero-sum game where someone else's success somehow diminishes your own. Everyone's journey is different. Everyone's timeline is different. Everyone's definition of success is different. Let them is about releasing the need to compare, the need to measure yourself against others. It's about recognizing that their path is their path, and it has absolutely nothing to do with yours. But as always, we need to bring in let me. Because let them alone can lead to resignation, to a sense of helplessness. Let me focus on my own path. Let me appreciate my own strengths, my own talents, my own unique journey. Let me work towards my goals, my dreams, my definition of success. Let me is about taking responsibility for your own life. It's about recognizing that you have the power to create the life you want, regardless of what anyone else is doing or achieving. It's about focusing on your own progress, your own growth, your own journey. It's about shifting your perspective from one of scarcity and competition to one of abundance and possibility. It's about recognizing that there's enough success, enough happiness, enough love to go around, and that someone else's good fortune doesn't take anything away from you. It simply shows you what's possible. And that, my friends, is where we can start to turn comparison from a source of pain into a source of inspiration. So, we've acknowledged that comparison can be a trap, a source of pain and negativity. But what if I told you that comparison, when used correctly, can actually be one of your greatest teachers? See, there are two fundamentally different ways to compare yourself to others. There's what Mel Robbins calls torture comparison, and then there's teacher comparison. And understanding the difference between these two is key to turning comparison from a source of suffering into a source of growth. Torture comparison is what we've been talking about so far. It's when you focus on things you can't change, things that are inherent to someone else's life or circumstances. It is looking at someone and saying, I wish I had their natural beauty, their bone structure, their height, their perfect skin, upbringing, their wealthy family, their supportive parents, their privileged education, talents, their athletic ability, their musical genius, their artistic flair, luck, their perfect timing, their seemingly effortless opportunities. These are things that are largely fixed. You can't change your genetics, you can't change your past, and you can't control the random events of life. So, when you compare yourself to others in these areas, you're essentially setting yourself up for failure. You're creating a standard that you can never meet, and it's only going to lead to feelings of inadequacy and resentment. It's torture. But then there's teacher comparison. This is where things get interesting. Teacher comparison is when you look at someone else's success, not with envy, but with curiosity. You look at what they've achieved, what they've created, what they've overcome, and you ask yourself, what can I learn from them? It's not about wishing you were them. It's about recognizing that their success is evidence of what's possible. It's about seeing them as a role model, a source of inspiration, a guide. For example, maybe you see a colleague who's incredibly successful in their career. Instead of feeling jealous and resentful, you ask yourself, what skills do they have that I could develop? What habits do they have that contribute to their success? What steps do they take to get where they are? What can I learn from their approach, their mindset, their work ethic? Or maybe you see a friend who's built an amazing relationship. Instead of feeling envious of their happiness, you ask yourself, how do they communicate with their partner? How do they handle conflict? What qualities do they bring to the relationship that make it so strong? See the difference? You're not focusing on what you lack. You're focusing on what you can learn, what you can apply, what you can grow into. Mel Robbins shares a great story about this in the book. She has a friend named Molly, who's a talented interior designer. Molly had been wanting to build her online presence, to market her business through social media, but she kept putting it off. She felt overwhelmed, intimidated, and unsure of where to start. Then she saw someone in her neighborhood, someone she didn't particularly like, who had suddenly started posting these amazing photos of her home and design projects on social media. And this woman's posts were getting tons of engagement, tons of likes, tons of comments. Molly's initial reaction was, understandably, jealousy and frustration. She's not even a real designer, she thought. How is she doing this? It's not fair. But then she shifted her perspective. She started to see this woman not as a threat, but as a teacher. She looked at her website, she analyzed her posts, she studied her approach, And she realized that this woman wasn't doing anything magical. She was simply doing the work. She was putting in the time, the effort, the consistency. And that's when Molly realized, if she can do it, I can do it. That jealousy, that initial feeling of frustration, became a catalyst for change. It showed Molly what was possible. It gave her a roadmap, a blueprint, a model to follow, and that's the power of let them. Let them be successful. Let them have the amazing website, the thriving business, the beautiful relationship. Let them show you what's possible. But then, bring in let me. Let me learn from their example. Let me get to work. Let me put in the time, the effort, the consistency. Let me take action. Let me is about turning that initial spark of jealousy, that feeling of comparison, into fuel for your own growth. It's about recognizing that other people's success is not a threat to you. It's an invitation. It's an invitation to step up, to learn, to grow, to create the life you want. And that, my friends, is how you turn comparison from a source of pain into a source of power. We've talked about managing stress, overcoming the fear of judgment, and turning comparison into a tool for growth. Now, let's turn to something that's incredibly important to all of us: friendship. Specifically, adult friendship. Because, let's be honest, adult friendship is hard. It's not like it was in high school or college, when you were surrounded by people your own age, going through the same experiences, with built-in opportunities to connect every single day. Something fundamental shifts when you become an adult. Mel Robbins calls it the Great Scattering. Think about it. You graduate from high school or college, and suddenly, everyone goes their separate ways. Your friends move to different cities, they get married, they have kids, they pursue different careers, they get immersed in their own lives. The structure, the routine, the proximity that made friendships so easy in your younger years, it's gone. And that's where the confusion, the loneliness, the frustration often sets in. We expect our friendships to stay the same, to be effortless, to be like they were when we were younger. We expect to be invited to everything, to always be included, to have that constant sense of connection and belonging. But the reality of adult friendship is very different, and it's often governed by three key pillars: proximity, timing, and energy. Proximity, this is the most obvious one. It's simply about how physically close you are to your friends. When you live near someone, when you see them regularly, it's much easier to maintain a close friendship. You can grab coffee spontaneously, run errands together, drop by for a quick visit. But when your friends move away, that natural, effortless connection becomes much harder to sustain. Timing. This is about where you are in your life. Are you in the same stage? Are you going through similar experiences? When you're single and your friends are all getting married and having kids, it can be hard to relate. Or when you're focused on your career and your friends are all retiring, it can create a disconnect. It's not that you don't care about each other. It's just that your lives are moving in different directions, and your priorities are shifting. Energy. This is the most intangible of the three, but it's just as important. It's about the vibe between you and your friends. Do you click? Do you have fun together? Do you feel energized and uplifted after spending time with them? Or do you feel drained, depleted, or like you have to be someone you're not? Energy shifts over time. Sometimes you grow closer to people, and sometimes you grow apart, and that's okay. Understanding these three pillars is crucial, because it helps us to see that the changes in our friendships are often not personal. It's not that your friends don't love you anymore, or that they're intentionally excluding you. It's simply that life happens. People move, priorities shift, and energy flows in different directions. And that's where let them becomes so essential. Let them drift away. Let them move to a new city, or get married, or have kids, or focus on their careers. Let them prioritize different things. Let them not always be available. Let them not always text back right away. It's about accepting that friendships evolve and change. It's about releasing the expectation that things will always stay the same. It's about recognizing that everyone is on their own journey, and that their journey might not always align perfectly with yours. But, as always, let them is only half the equation. We also need to bring in let me. Let me be flexible. Let me be understanding of their changing circumstances. Let me reach out when I can, even if it's just a quick text or a phone call. Let me be open to new friendships, to new connections, to new ways of relating to the people in my life. Let me is about taking responsibility for your own experience of friendship. It's about recognizing that you have the power to nurture the relationships that matter to you, to adapt to the changing dynamics, and to create the kind of friendships you want, even in the midst of the great scattering. It's about being proactive, about being intentional, about being the kind of friend you want to have. Because adult friendship, unlike childhood friendship, isn't something that just happens. It's something you create. So we've acknowledged that adult friendships are complex, that they're constantly evolving, and that the great scattering is a real thing. But what about those friendships that fade? The ones that were once so close, so vital, and then slowly drift away? It's a painful experience, isn't it? It can feel like a loss, like a rejection, like you've done something wrong. You might find yourself wondering, what happened? Why aren't we as close as we used to be? Did I do something to offend them? But here's the truth. Friendships will fade. It's a natural part of life. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It doesn't mean the friendship wasn't valuable or meaningful. It simply means that life happens. Sometimes people grow apart. Their interests change, their priorities shift, their paths diverge. Sometimes the timing is just off. Maybe one of you is going through a major life change, a new job, a new relationship, a move to a new city, and the other isn't. Sometimes the energy simply shifts. You no longer click in the same way. You no longer have as much in common. You no longer feel that same spark of connection. And it's okay. It's normal. It's part of the natural ebb and flow of life. The danger lies in making up stories about why the friendship is fading. We tend to personalize it, to assume that it's our fault, that we've done something to cause the distance. Or we might go the other direction and start to demonize the other person, to make them the bad guy in our story. They're so selfish, we might think. They don't care about me anymore. They've replaced me with other friends. Mel Robbins shares a powerful story about this in the book. When she and her family moved to a new town, they quickly fell in with a group of families. They spent tons of time together, their kids were friends, they had this amazing close-knit community. It felt like the perfect setup. But then, one of their closest friends from another state moved to their town and bought a house right across the street from the other families in the group, and slowly, subtly, things started to shift. Mel and her husband started to feel excluded. They weren't invited to as many gatherings, they weren't included in as many conversations, they felt like they were on the outside looking in, and Mel's initial reaction was, well, it wasn't pretty. She got angry, she got jealous, she started to resent the new family, she felt like they had stolen her friends. She made up all sorts of stories in her head about what was happening, and she let those stories consume her. But the reality was, it wasn't personal. It was simply about proximity. The new family lived across the street from the other families. It was natural, it was easy, for them to spend more time together. It wasn't a deliberate attempt to exclude Mel and her husband. It was just life. And that's the key. When a friendship fades, try to resist the urge to make it about you. Don't assume that it's a reflection of your worth or that you've done something wrong. Instead, let them go. Wish them well. Be grateful for the time you had together, for the memories you shared, for the connection you experienced. Don't hold on to resentment or bitterness or anger. Let it go with grace. But what about creating new friendships? Because as much as we need to accept that some friendships will fade, we also need to be proactive about building new connections. Adult friendships don't just happen magically. You can't just sit at home and expect amazing friends to appear on your doorstep. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be intentional. You have to be the one to initiate. It can feel awkward, it can feel vulnerable, it can feel scary, but it's essential. Mel shares her own experience of moving to a new town and feeling completely alone. She didn't know anyone, she felt isolated and disconnected, and she was miserable. But then, she started to take action. She started to say yes to opportunities, to strike up conversations with people she met, to put herself out there, even when it felt uncomfortable. She started small. She complimented people on their outfits. She asked questions. She smiled and said hello to everyone she passed. She joined a walking group. She volunteered at local events. She introduced herself to strangers. And slowly, gradually, she started to build a community. She started to make connections. She started to find her people. The let me aspect of this is crucial. Let me be open. Let me be vulnerable. Let me be the one to say hello, to ask a question, to extend an invitation. Let me be willing to put myself out there, even if it feels awkward, even if I'm afraid of rejection. And remember those weak ties we talked about earlier? Those casual acquaintances, the people you see regularly but don't know well, they can be a powerful source of connection. The barista at your coffee shop, the person you always see at the gym, the neighbor you wave to every morning, these are all potential friendships waiting to be discovered. So start small, smile, say hello, ask a question, compliment someone's shoes. You never know where it might lead. Because the truth is, everyone is craving connection. Everyone wants to feel seen, to feel valued, to feel like they belong. And sometimes all it takes is one small act of kindness, one brave moment of vulnerability to create a friendship that can change your life. We've explored the power of let them and let me in managing stress, overcoming the fear of judgment, and navigating the complexities of adult friendship. Now, let's tackle a topic that can be incredibly frustrating and even heartbreaking: wanting someone you love to change. Maybe it's your partner who you wish would be more ambitious, or more affectionate, or more responsible. Maybe it's a friend who you wish would take better care of themselves, or get out of a toxic relationship, or pursue their dreams. Maybe it's a family member who you wish would stop drinking, or stop being so negative, or stop making choices that are hurting them. We've all been there, haven't we? We see someone we care about struggling, making choices that we believe are harmful or self-destructive, and we desperately want them to change. We want them to be happier, healthier, more fulfilled. We want them to reach their potential, to live the life we know they're capable of living. And so, we try to help. We offer advice, we give suggestions, we nag, we plead, we criticize, we threaten. We do everything we can think of to motivate them to change. But here's the harsh truth. You can't make someone change. You can't force them to be different. You can't control their behavior, their choices, their timeline. It's the illusion of control all over again. We think that if we just say the right thing or do the right thing or push them hard enough, we can somehow make them see the light, make them change their ways. But it doesn't work that way. In fact, trying to force change usually backfires. It creates resistance. It makes people dig in their heels. It pushes them further away from the very change you're hoping for. There's a psychological principle called reactance, and it basically means that people have a natural aversion to being controlled. When we feel like someone is trying to take away our freedom, our autonomy, our sense of agency, we instinctively resist. We push back. We rebel. Think about it. How do you feel when someone tells you what to do or tries to control your behavior? You probably feel defensive, resentful, maybe even angry. You might even do the opposite of what they want, just to prove that you can. It's the same with the people you love. When you pressure them to change, when you nag them, when you criticize them, you're triggering their reactance. You're making them feel like their choices are being taken away, and their natural response is to resist. The truth about motivation is this: people only change when they are ready, when they feel motivated, when they see the need for change in their own lives. You can't force that motivation on them. It has to come from within. Think about the neuroscience of it. Our brains are wired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. Change is often painful. It's uncomfortable. It's hard work. It requires effort, discipline, and a willingness to face difficult emotions. So, if someone is not ready to face that pain, if they're not motivated to put in the effort, no amount of external pressure is going to make them change. In fact, it might even make them more resistant, because now they're not only dealing with the pain of change, but also with the pain of your disapproval, your judgment, your constant nagging. That's where let them becomes so essential. Let them not want to change. Let them stay stuck. Let them make their own choices, even if you don't agree with them. Let them continue down the path they're on, even if you believe it's the wrong path. It's about releasing the need to control their behavior. It's about accepting that they are on their own journey, and that you can't force them to be on your timeline. It's about recognizing that their choices are their choices, and that they have the right to make them, even if you think they're making a mistake. But as always, let them is not the end of the story. We also need to bring in let me. Let me focus on my own behavior. Let me be supportive. Let me be understanding. Let me be a source of encouragement without being controlling or judgmental. Let me create an environment that makes change feel possible, that makes it feel safe, that makes it feel desirable. Let me is about recognizing that while you can't make someone change, you can influence them. You can inspire them. You can model the behavior you want to see. You can offer support and encouragement without pressure or expectation. You can be a source of love and acceptance, even when you don't agree with their choices. And that, my friends, is often the most powerful thing you can do. Because when someone feels loved, accepted, and supported, they're much more likely to find the strength and the courage to change themselves. We've acknowledged the frustrating truth. You can't force anyone to change, but that doesn't mean you're powerless. Far from it. Because while you can't control someone else's behavior, you can influence it. And that's where the real magic happens. It's all about understanding how influence actually works. We're social creatures, deeply influenced by the people around us. It's a phenomenon that researchers call social contagion. The idea that behaviors, emotions, and even ideas can spread through a group like a virus. Think about it. Have you ever noticed that when you're around someone who's really enthusiastic and energetic, you start to feel more energized yourself? Or when you're around someone who's constantly complaining and negative, you start to feel dragged down? That's social contagion in action, and it applies to all kinds of behaviors. If you see someone consistently exercising, eating healthy, pursuing their goals, it starts to plant a seed in your own mind. It makes those behaviors seem more possible, more appealing, more normal. So, if you want to inspire change in someone you care about, the most powerful thing you can do is to model that change yourself. Don't preach, don't nag, don't lecture, just live it. If you want your partner to eat healthier, start cooking delicious, healthy meals for yourself. If you want your friend to exercise more, invite them to join you on a hike or a bike ride. If you want your child to read more, let them see you reading. Show them how it's done. Make it look appealing. Make it look easy. Make it look fun. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being authentic. It's about demonstrating through your own actions that the change you're hoping for is not only possible, but also desirable. And to really amplify your influence, Mel Robbins introduces a powerful tool called the ABC Loop. It's a simple 3-step process that can help you navigate these situations with grace and effectiveness. A. Apologize and ask. Start by apologizing for any past pressure or judgment. Acknowledge that you may have been overbearing, or that you haven't been as supportive as you could have been. Then, ask open-ended questions. Instead of telling them what to do, get curious about their perspective. How do you feel about your health right now? What's holding you back from pursuing that goal? What are your thoughts on this? The key here is to listen without judgment, without interruption, without trying to offer solutions. Just create a safe space for them to share their feelings. B. Back off and observe. This is the let them part. Once you've had that initial conversation, back off. Stop pressuring them. Stop nagging them. Stop trying to control their behavior. Give them space to process, to reflect, to come to their own conclusions. And while you're backing off, observe their behavior. Are they making any small changes? Are they showing any signs of progress? C. Celebrate and continue. This is where positive reinforcement comes in. Whenever you see them making any progress, no matter how small, celebrate it. Acknowledge their efforts. Show your appreciation. Let them know that you see them, that you're proud of them, that you believe in them. A simple, "Hey, I noticed you went for a walk today. That's awesome," can go a long way. And crucially, continue to model the behavior you want to see. Keep living your life, keep pursuing your goals, keep demonstrating the positive changes you've made. The ABC Loop isn't a quick fix. It requires patience, consistency, and a genuine commitment to supporting the other person's journey. It's not about forcing them to change. It's about creating an environment where change feels possible, where it feels desirable, where it feels supported. And remember that, let me throughout this process. Let me be patient. Let me be understanding. Let me be a source of encouragement, not pressure. Let me celebrate their progress, no matter how small. Let me trust that they are capable of change, even if it takes time. Because ultimately, the most powerful influence you have is not your words, but your actions. It's about showing up, being supportive, and believing in the other person's ability to create the life they want. And that, my friends, is how you truly inspire lasting change. We've talked about inspiring change through influence. But what about when someone you love is truly struggling? What about when it's more than just wanting them to eat healthier or get a better job? What about when they're facing serious challenges, addiction, depression, grief, a major life crisis? This is where things get incredibly difficult and incredibly important. Because our natural instinct when we see someone we care about in pain is to want to fix it. We want to rescue them, to take away their suffering, to make everything better. But here's a hard truth, and it's one of the most challenging aspects of the let them theory. Sometimes, the more you try to rescue someone, the more you actually keep them from helping themselves. It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? How can helping someone be harmful? It's all about the difference between supporting and enabling. Supporting someone means providing them with the resources, the encouragement, and the space they need to work through their challenges. It's about believing in their ability to heal, to grow, to overcome. It's about being there for them without taking over. Enabling, on the other hand, is when you shield someone from the consequences of their actions. It's when you make excuses for them, when you cover up their mistakes, when you constantly bail them out of trouble. It's when you do for them what they could and should be doing for themselves. And while enabling often comes from a place of love, it ultimately hinders their growth. It prevents them from learning from their mistakes, from developing resilience, from taking responsibility for their own lives. It keeps them stuck in a cycle of dependence, and it can actually make their problems worse. Think of it like this. Imagine someone is learning to swim. Supporting them might mean offering encouragement, providing them with lessons, being there to cheer them on as they practice. Enabling them would be jumping into the pool and holding them up every time they start to struggle. They might feel safe in the moment, but they'll never learn to swim on their own. The same principle applies to any kind of struggle. When you constantly rescue someone from the consequences of their actions, you're robbing them of the opportunity to learn, to grow, to develop the skills they need to navigate life's challenges. You're sending them the message that they're not capable of handling things on their own, and that's incredibly damaging. So, how do you provide support the right way? How do you help someone who's struggling without enabling them or hindering their progress? First and foremost, let them feel. Let them experience the pain, the discomfort, the consequences of their choices. It's hard to watch someone you love struggle, but it's often necessary. They need to feel the weight of their situation in order to be motivated to change. Second, let me offer support with conditions. This is especially important when it comes to financial support. It's okay to help someone financially, but it's crucial to set clear boundaries and expectations. For example, you might say, "I'm willing to pay for your therapy as long as you commit to going regularly." Or, "I'll help you with rent, but you need to be actively looking for a job." Or, "You can stay with me, but you have to be sober." The key is to make your support conditional on their willingness to take responsibility for their own recovery. It's not about punishing them, it's about empowering them. It's about saying, "I believe in you, and I'm here to support you, but I'm not going to enable your self-destructive behavior." And, perhaps most importantly, let me create an environment that supports their healing. This means creating a space that is safe, supportive, and free from judgment. It means being a listening ear, offering encouragement, and celebrating their progress, no matter how small. It might mean helping them find resources like a therapist, a support group, or a treatment center. It might mean setting boundaries with other family members who are enabling their behavior. It might mean simply being present, being a source of unconditional love and acceptance. It's not about doing the work for them. It's about creating the conditions where they can do the work for themselves. It's about believing in their strength, their resilience, their capacity to heal. And it's about walking alongside them on their journey, offering support and encouragement every step of the way. Because ultimately, that's what true love and true support are all about. It's not about rescuing, it's about empowering. We've covered a lot of ground, from managing stress to navigating friendships and supporting loved ones. Now, let's talk about something that's at the heart of the human experience: love. Romantic relationships. Finding love, building a lasting partnership, navigating the ups and downs of a committed relationship. It's one of the most beautiful and often one of the most challenging journeys we undertake. And it's an area where the let them theory can be incredibly powerful because so often in our quest for love, we give our power away. We chase, we pursue, we try to force things to happen, and we end up hurting ourselves in the process. Let's start with the early stages of dating. It can be exciting, exhilarating, full of possibility, but it can also be a minefield of confusion, insecurity, and disappointment. And one of the biggest mistakes we make is chasing the potential of a relationship instead of seeing the reality of it. We meet someone, we feel that spark, that attraction, and we start to imagine a future with them. We project our hopes, our dreams, our desires onto them, and we convince ourselves that this is the one, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. We ignore the red flags. We make excuses for their behavior. We tell ourselves that they'll change, that they'll come around, that they'll eventually see how amazing we are. But here's the truth. People's behavior tells you everything you need to know. If someone is not making an effort, if they're not prioritizing you, if they're sending mixed signals, if they're not choosing you, let them. Let them show you who they are. Let them reveal their true intentions, their true feelings, their true selves. Don't try to interpret their behavior. Don't try to make excuses for them. Don't try to convince yourself that they're something they're not. If they're not texting you back, if they're not making plans with you, if they're not treating you with respect and consideration, let them. It's not your job to chase them, to convince them, to earn their love. The pain of not being chosen is real. It hurts. It can make you question your worth, your value, your lovability. But chasing someone who doesn't choose you back is only going to prolong that pain, and it's going to keep you from finding the person who will. Let me value myself. Let me respect myself. Let me walk away from situations that are not serving me. Let me choose to believe that I deserve a love that is reciprocal, that is respectful, that is real. Now, let's talk about commitment. Maybe you're in a relationship, and you're starting to wonder where things are going. You're ready for the next step. Moving in together, getting engaged, getting married, having kids, but you're not sure if your partner is on the same page. How do you have that conversation? How do you express your desires, your needs, your vision for the future without putting pressure on the other person, without making them feel cornered or trapped? It's about being honest, being direct, and being vulnerable. It's about saying, this is what I want. This is where I see myself going. And I want to know if you see yourself going there with me. It's not about issuing an ultimatum. It's not about demanding a commitment. It's about creating a space for open, honest communication where both of you can share your feelings, your desires, your fears without judgment. And if they're not ready, if they don't want the same things you want, if they're not willing to commit, let them. It's painful, it's heartbreaking, but it's also information. It's telling you something important about the relationship, about the other person, about the compatibility between you. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for the other person is to walk away. Because every ending, as painful as it may be, is also a new beginning. Breakups are brutal. They're a form of grief. You're not just losing a person. You're losing a future, a dream, a vision of what your life was going to be. You're losing a part of yourself. And it's going to hurt. It's going to feel like your heart is breaking because in a way it is. Your nervous system is going to feel it. You're going to experience all the stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And you need to allow yourself to feel it. Let me grieve. Let me cry. Let me be angry. Let me be sad. Let me be confused. Let me feel the full weight of this loss without trying to numb it or avoid it or rush through it. But also, let me heal. Let me take care of myself. Let me surround myself with people who love me, who support me, who lift me up. Let me remove the environmental triggers, the photos, the mementos, the reminders of the relationship that are keeping me stuck in the past. Let me fill my calendar with activities that bring me joy, that distract me, that help me move forward. Let me learn from this experience. Let me understand what I want, what I need, what I deserve in a relationship. Let me use this heartbreak as an opportunity to grow, to evolve, to become a stronger, more resilient, more loving version of myself. And, most importantly, let me believe that this ending is not the end of my story. It's a new beginning. It's an opportunity to create a life that is even more fulfilling, more authentic, more aligned with who I am and what I truly want. It's a chance to find a love that is even deeper, even stronger, even more real. Because you, my friends, deserve nothing less. So, here we are. We've journeyed through the core principles of the Let Them theory. We've explored how it applies to stress, to fear, to friendships, to relationships, to helping others, and to navigating the complexities of love. And I hope that by now, you're starting to feel the power of this incredibly simple yet transformative framework. Let's recap one last time what this is all about. Let Them is about acceptance. It's about recognizing that you can't control other people. You can't control the world around you, and you can't control the inevitable ups and downs of life. It's about releasing the need to manage, to fix, to force things to be different than they are. It's about letting go of the illusion of control and embracing the reality of what is. Let Me is about action. It's about taking responsibility for your own life, for your own choices, for your own happiness. It's about focusing on what you can control, your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, your response to whatever life throws your way. It's about choosing to be proactive, to be empowered, to be the author of your own story. Together, let them and let me create this dynamic, powerful framework for living a more fulfilling, more authentic, more joyful life. It's about releasing the things that are weighing you down and embracing the things that lift you up. It's about choosing to focus your energy where it truly matters, on yourself, on your own growth, on your own well-being. And I want to emphasize this. We all struggle with these things. We all struggle with the need to control, with the fear of judgment, with the complexities of relationships. You're not alone. This is part of the human experience. But the beautiful thing is, you can change. You can learn to navigate these challenges with more grace, more resilience, more power. You can create a life that is aligned with your values, with your dreams, with your deepest sense of self. And the Let Them theory is your tool for doing just that. It's a tool for reclaiming your power, for simplifying your life, for building amazing relationships, for creating the kind of life you've always wanted. It's about choosing happiness, choosing freedom, choosing you. It's not a magic wand. It's not a quick fix. It's a practice. It's something you have to cultivate day by day, moment by moment. So, I encourage you, start today. Start small. The next time you feel that urge to control, that surge of frustration, that fear of judgment, say to yourself, let them. And then follow it up with, let me. Let them be rude. Let me choose to be kind. Let them judge. Let me be authentic. Let them not text back. Let me focus on my own life. Let them be difficult. Let me set boundaries. Let them not change. Let me accept them as they are, or choose to move on. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. This is a journey, not a destination. There will be times when you slip up, when you fall back into old patterns, when you forget to use the theory. That's okay. Just keep practicing. Keep coming back to these two simple, powerful phrases, because the more you use them, the more you'll start to see the world different. You'll start to feel lighter, freer, more empowered. You'll start to create the kind of life you've always dreamed of, a life that is truly, authentically yours. What are you waiting for? It's time to step into your power. It's time to create the life you deserve. Your Let Me era starts now. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I hope this video has been helpful, and I encourage you to pick up a copy of Mel Robbins' The Let Them Theory to dive even deeper into this life-changing concept.